Ukraine has all the rights to defend itself by all means necessary, I repeat, by all means. Peace summit, what's the fuss about for Ukraine and for the world? NATO troops in Ukraine, ins and outs. Good afternoon, these topics in more detail in today's weekly wrap-up on UATV English with me, Henry Keane, as usual, breaking hard truth in easy terms for the whole free world directly from Ukraine. We are living in a Philistine and hypocritical world that questions even the most obviously necessary means of survival. Ukraine has been fending off the most brutal Russian aggression for more than 2 years in a row by now using Western military aid. That's right. But until recently, we could not use it to the full extent because someone in a land far, far away from this war does not want an escalation of this very war. Welcome to the best of all possible worlds that will all help to build. However, we are also living in another world where constant dropping actually wears away a stone. After Russian forces have made gains in the Kharkiv region in recent weeks, after an offensive in the area, the US President Joe Biden has given Ukraine permission to use American supply weapons to strike targets in Russia, near the Kharkiv region. White House ensures Ukraine that we are, finally, able to defend ourselves, to use US weapons, and I quote, for counter-fire purposes and to hit back at Russian forces hitting Ukrainian forces or preparing to hit them.
We can see the places of arms. Even from reconnaissance, you get maps, satellite images. You see where they stand, but you cannot respond. I think it's unfair. But we cannot, and this is a fact, risk the support of partners. And that is why we do not use the weapons of our partners on the territory of the Russian Federation. Please give us the opportunity to retaliate against their military.
Now again, until recently Washington, which provides the bulk of our weaponry, had resisted easing the restrictions for us to defend ourselves over the fears of escalation. I wonder when 19 people were killed and dozens more wounded last week after Russians hit a supermarket in the city of Kharkiv with 2 glide bombs, is that yet an escalation? Or when yesterday Russians sent dozens of Shahed drones and cruise missiles onto Ukrainian cities and energy infrastructure, are there any signs of escalation in that yet? I mean, more than 800 days of this war has already passed. And when someone in a galaxy far, far away says they fear escalation, the next thing I want to ask them, is there any fixed number of Ukrainians killed daily the world is ready to accept as normal and not yet an escalation? Like 20 civilians and 5 children Russia can murder in Ukraine per day. But please, Russia, not more, because more is an escalation and we want peace and not an escalation. These fears of escalation are even looking bad while being even worse than they look. However, there are also good news is we are finally moving towards global understanding when hard truth is actually voiced in easy terms.
Over the past few weeks, Ukraine came to us and asked for the authorization to use weapons that we're providing to defend against this aggression, including against Russian forces that are massing on the Russian side of the border and then attacking into Ukraine. That went right to the president, and as you've heard, he's approved the use of our weapons for that purpose. Going forward, we'll continue to do what we've been doing, which is, as necessary, adapt and adjust. And that, as I said, has been a hallmark of our engagement. It will continue to be.
Well, here is an even harder truth in even easier terms for you. The American weapons was not, is not, and never will be an essential goal for us in Ukraine. Freedom is. To become what we as a nation want to become, a European Ukrainian nation which has earned its place in the European family by standing tall for European rights and freedoms against all Russian odds. And American weapons are an essential tool of reaching that essential goal, to defend our freedom against Russian aggression. And Russia will eventually fall, not because of Ukraine or American weapons, no. Russia will fall because history says so, because Russia has made the critical mistake all fallen empires in the history of humankind have done. Russia has allied itself with one man only. The man whose beloved accent got absolutely corrupted by an absolute power. And so this man's inevitable fall would mean the same inevitable fall of his failed empire. As we all remember earlier, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky called on the leaders of the United States and China to personally participate in the peace summit. He also stated that Kremlin leader Vladimir Putin would be pleased if Biden ignored the peace summit in Switzerland. On Wednesday, the White House confirmed that the US will participate in the planned peace summit in Switzerland. However, media reports indicate that Biden is likely to miss the peace summit as it coincides with a fundraising event for his re-election campaign in California. You think we're upset in Ukraine, and rightfully so, but as John Kirby, U.S. National Security Council Coordinator for Strategic Communications, said, I quote, "The United States and President Biden have been there for President Zelensky and for the people of Ukraine, and that will continue regardless of who sits in what chair at the peace summit." So the importance of the peace summit is obvious. It shows precisely who is who craves peace, and who influence.
And together we will discuss our next steps together: air defense, like you said already, Prime Minister, and weapon production, and our diplomacy. You can see that Russia is trying to expand the war and disrupt the peace summit, and we are preparing. It is also evident that Russia is preparing for provocations in the Baltic region against borders in the region. Only together we can stop the madness from Moscow. We must get this job done as soon as possible.
Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi said that his country will participate in the G7 meeting on Ukraine as well as in the Global Peace Summit. India will participate in all important summits that advance the agenda of global peace, security and development, Modi said in an interview to PTI. He noted that India will support the voice of the Global South at the summits to shape the global discourse and advance the concept of human-centered development and a prosperous world. And what about China? Well, for now, Comrade Xi Jinping says he will not be there because Comrade Putin will not be there. I quote, "China has always insisted that an international peace conference should be endorsed by both Russia and Ukraine," Chinese Foreign Minister spokesperson Mao Ning said. Well, maybe Comrades Ning and Jinping are both not aware that even if invited, Moscow itself does not acknowledge the format of peace talks offered by Ukraine and the West and considers this summit illegal. Or maybe Xi Jinping forgot that Putin is indicted by International Criminal Court. After all, the Chinese leader does not want his eternal ally and a friend to come to a party where he gets arrested, right? Or does he? French President Emmanuel Macron has opened the door to discussions on sending troops to Ukraine at a conference in Paris on February 26, suggesting that one area Western troops could help with would be train Ukrainians in Ukraine. Defense Minister of France said in a statement to Reuters, as already mentioned several times, training on Ukrainian soil is one of the projects discussed since the conference on support for Ukraine convened by the President of the Republic. The plan as of today is more concrete: to send military trainers to Ukraine despite the concerns of some allies and criticism about, oh my God, a terrorist country ruled by an indicted thug at large, yes, Russia. So the thing is that may announce his decision next week during a visit by Ukrainian president to France. The diplomats say, while it is quite obviously goes without any saying, Paris hoped to forge and lead a coalition of countries offering such assistance to Kyiv's war effort, even though some of its European Union partners fear it could lead to direct conflict with Russia. Well, the thing with these fearful European partners is it's okay. They will keep on fearing, talking, discussing, appeasing Putin, even if he would have invaded their own country. These fearful talkers are that impotent part of Europe that believes that freedom could be talked out and not fought out. These are the same type of people who tried to appease Hitler. These type of people are the exact reason why Putin invaded Ukraine after all, because he felt like he could. So France would initially send a limited number of personnel to assess the modalities of a mission before dispatching several hundred trainers, diplomats say. Training would center around demining, keeping equipment operational and technical expertise for warplanes to be provided by the West. Paris would also finance, arm and train a Ukrainian motorized brigade, the arrangements and very advanced, and we could expect something already next week, said one of the sources. So in easy terms, let the fearful fear, the talkers talk, and the doers do. Because it will be doers who's going to win this war and set a new law and new order. And Europe is in danger while Russia is not stopped and taught a harsh lesson. International law and order, countries' sovereignty are not to be messed with and breached without severe consequences. Because what about not only Ukraine? What about smaller European countries otherwise, like my native Latvia, for example, and all of the Baltic states? We all are in danger. Well, the whole fuss with Western troops here in Ukraine, in super easy terms, is like, if we keep on fearing an escalation, escalation is exactly what we're going to get. And when Russia attacks a NATO country, then we see if NATO is worth existing. I believe this is very much in Moscow's plan just as well. Now, time for more on UATV English. You ask hard questions, we try to answer in easy terms. This week, the question asked by our dear follower Xenofontras 1112, and that question we all want to know the answer to, by the way, sounds like, how much equipment do these Russians BASTARDS still have? A lot. Russians already came to a point when they have to take Soviet-era rarities off the museum shelves and send them directly to the battlefield. But they have a lot of that indeed. You see, this is exactly the case with Russia. Its vastness is falsely taken for greatness. It is a vast country, yes, with vast resources, yes, and enormous amount of Soviet warehouses that are surely full of outdated Soviet military junk, including the mindset. So Russia is a half-life version of the Soviets in terms of its military might, but it is just as crooked and as imperial in terms of that said mindset. Until Putin does not want to disturb Moscow and St. Petersburg regions with direct mobilization, fearing riots and protests, the Russians allow Putin to do whatever he pleases, to reopen all of the Soviet war stashes, to spend billions of dollars monthly to buy arms from other terrorist countries, dooming Russia for more sanctions and more economical isolation today and reparations in the future, and using lives of young Russian generations as a collateral for his monstrous war credit. Well, as my father used to say, the longer the party, the harder the hangover. The Russian party was thrown way long enough for the hangover to be devastating. And it's not weapons or equipment, dear Xenofontras 1112. It is the change. Everyone faces need to change from time to time. Because no matter how many warships or cannons you have, if you cannot adapt to a change, you will fall. And as we clearly can see, the last thing Russia wants is to change. Well, then it will be changed. And this is exactly what Ukraine is doing these days, changing Russia for the sake of the whole world, already for more than 2 years in a row. Well, that seems to be it, folks, for tonight and for this week. For news on Ukraine, stay with Ukraine. Next week, my colleagues in UATV English will break more hard truth to easy terms for the whole free world directly from Ukraine. We thank you for being with us. Please like, subscribe and share. Your voice and support matters. It helps to promote Ukrainian voice worldwide. Stay safe, tune for more, and stand with Ukraine. Goodbye.